pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next order of business, the approval of minutes. I've read them and reviewed them. Look for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. First order of business is RDA for 21 South Cross Road.
Here's some photos for review, 2 sets. The proposal here is to fill in, seems really loud, to fill in some sinkholes within the yard, all within the buffer zone. The area was formerly lawn, but as the sinkholes have gotten bigger, the applicant stopped mowing in this area, so it looks like it may not be part of the existing yard, but it is. The house was permitted in '92, has a COC. All of this is approximately 50 feet away from the wetland. Heidi recommends pre- and post-construction inspection and erosion control, hay bales.
Bill?
This appears pretty straightforward, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions.
Okay.
Oh, and wetland markers, too. Forgot the markers.
No questions.
Deb?
What do you plan to fill the sinkholes with?
I think Peter said that Peter Breen's
Phil.
doing the work for us, and he said
Phil with Sandy.
he
Phil
couldn't
cover.
email it to me, but he faxed it to your office this afternoon.
So, screened half-inch loam.
That's the finish. The front is... the
Oh,
fill is
clean
sandy
fill,
clay.
sandy clay, using a rubber tracked mini cap and a screened half-inch loam seed on top.
Doug?
We believe that the original developer buried stumps, is what we were told most likely happened.
So these aren't stumps.
We believe that trees were buried there, and they rotted over time.
Okay, is there going to be any excavation to get out the material, the
I
bad
don't
material?
believe so. Peter Breen is in charge of the project for us. I think he was just going to put clean fill in and then loam over the top.
Okay.
I think that would be a bad move because I think it was a stump dump at one time in the back.
Well, that's what it is. The stumps are probably not 100% rotted out, so you're going to, once you fill it in, it's going to sink again
Right.
with time. So that's why I asked the question about...
Might be a major undertaking if they try to put stumps in.
If there were a lot of stumps buried in there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there is.
Well, the house was built in 1992, so that's most likely when, if any, stumps were buried. We don't know that they were, but if they were, that's likely when it happened in 92. So it's been a long time, so.
They've been developing over the last several years. So
whole-
it's not like they just appeared this year.
The holes you're talking about?
The holes, yes.
That's all the questions I had.
Any more questions? If not, a motion?
Jen, what are you looking for, a negative what?
Negative number 3.
A -3. I'll move that we issue a -3 with a pre-construction meeting to be determined by the administrator.
Pre and post with erosion control and markers.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All set.
Well said.
We're all
Yep,
set.
we'll issue that by the end of the week.
Thank you.
We have 242-1671 requested continue to March 9th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1672, 4982 Sutton Street, and I will have recused myself to the vice chairman.
I have it. Randy?
So you should have in front of you possibly the last, well, at least it was sent to you, the last peer review letter from both Ecotech, Scott Morrison, and Graves Engineering. Their final wrap-up reviews were emailed to everyone.
So,
This one, the dated February 12th, I believe is the last one.
okay, so it appears we have that letter. Jen, just before Randy goes, let me just ask you, are there any outstanding issues in your mind with regard to this project? Either you or the consultant?
Not substantial with the project. Randy and I had discussion, and the commission had discussion early on about old orders that are open on the site. There are approximately 8 of them, although they may not all be. One of the most major and recent one is the VMP is expired and still open, and there are some others, so I've asked Randy to address that. It isn't your policy to issue new orders when there are open orders. We always sort of research that and try to wrap them up. But given that there's quite a bit of work probably to be done to wrap that up and the timing for this project, I think we need to lay out some kind of plan for that.
So who's going to address the orders first, you or Randy? We should
The orders themselves, I wasn't, I have a list of them, but other than that, I wasn't preparing to address them in any substantial way.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking is if there are open orders that you feel need to be addressed, either closed or complied with, or whatever you want done with them, would those orders be something we could address in an order of conditions on this project, or does this project need to stay open pending those being addressed?
I'm not prepared to answer that. I don't even know what most of these orders are for. The only one I'm intimately familiar with is the VMP, which was active when I got here and has been extended twice, but is now expired.
Okay, so I guess just because this is a notice of intent, we need to have a direction, I think. I don't think it behooves anybody to keep it open. However, we would need to address, I would say, in the order of conditions that we do issue, the open orders. I mean, now that we're aware of them.
I would welcome a special condition, working on a timeline to address those. I've made progress since they've given it to me, identifying applicants, trying to find old plans, things like that. So I'd like to do it kind of, not piecemeal, but if I try to jumble them all together, it's going to get very confusing. So I'd like to work with Jennifer under a special condition for this project to identify identifiable and concrete dates to meet and to submit. And then obviously once I submit, it would be hard to dictate exact dates you'd issue, but because of how much work might need to be done or not need to be done. But identify concrete submittal dates with Jennifer and keep a good continual process going with no gaps. And I'd like to address it that way if I possibly could.
All right, let's as we go down the table, once you start to address the project, we'll hear from the other commissioners as to how they want to go forward on the orders. Yeah, go ahead. We'll talk about it now.
Sure.
If you want, talk about the project first, and then we'll go to that.
I just have a brief statement for the project. As you heard from Jennifer, there was no substantial outstanding items from either Graves or Ecotech. In fact, their letters of February 12th, one from Graves and one from Ecotech, substantiate that statement. We thought there were a couple of maybe possible loose ends that weren't they didn't request additional information in the Graves letter, but we thought we should clarify. And so we issued a letter on February 22nd, a response letter to the final Graves and Ecotech letter, basically saying, just clearing up a couple of items, mostly to do with the stormwater report. It didn't change any of the information in the stormwater report. It was clarifying a couple figures. And so in my mind, between the stormwater report and adding a couple of notes to the plans, we've addressed in their entirety all comments from Graves and Ecotech with the current submission the commission has. So with that, I think the third-party review process anyway come to an end, and it was a pleasure working with them, and I think it modified the project significantly in some avenues, but it looks like a project that we can all live with, and we've addressed the substantial environmental comments. So.
At the last meeting, the plan that we had that addressed the changes to the stream, I don't recall the plan number, and I don't have it in front of me. It was the latest revised plan. It was maybe C3 something.
There was one called 301A, which was the interim drainage plan, how we're going to leave it during the winter holdover from 2016 to 2017.
There was discussion of a bypass.
Pipe, correct.
Yeah, so on that particular piece, that stands out in my mind. Did you achieve a consensus with the consultant on that?
Yes, leaving it open, just plugging it, leaving it open, not backfilling it with and rendering it inoperable was something we wanted to do. They wanted to leave it open just during a 2 or even 3-year stabilization period while the new channel's going through its growing pains. Let's leave an avenue that is an easy change to remove the flow from the new channel should we encounter any problems. So that change, that was added to the plan for the last submission, and that was one of the major changes that they prompted.
I believe it was. So that plan, then, that record, that'll become part of the record drawing with
already is.
We already have it.
Done
Yeah.
deal. Okay, great. Thank you.
Jennifer, this is a question for you. With this project before us, excluding the other orders, the old orders that have not been addressed, do you feel as though this project is up to speed and would be able to close this evening?
Outside of the old orders, I think everything that we've asked for, or the consultants have asked for, have been addressed. We addressed the DEP comments at the last hearing of widening the restriction at the replication area, which wasn't part of the consultant review, but it was commented on by DEP. That was done. So.
And would any of these 8 old orders have any impact on the project before us?
It's hard to say. I mean, it more becomes an issue of, I don't think there's anything, I don't know what all of these orders are.
One of them is taxiway Foxtrot, one of them is the vegetation
So some of them,
plan.
issues we've had in the past is you go and do new work and you alter the old work, so then you can't as-built survey the old work.
Yeah.
That becomes one of the issues. I don't know if any of these orders would be affected by that.
So the sheet, you handed me a sheet, and it has a listing of, to our knowledge, these are the old orders that were issued, that some of them are very old. And but there was 242, 231, 491, 872, 951, 1020, 1087, 1089, and 1347. Some of these, it appears, bond money was collected and is probably still cooking away somewhere. So it would appear to me that some of these might be very easily disposed of and some might require some work on behalf of the applicant. For example, there's a filing 242-491. It appears there was a $5,000 bond back in 1989. Then it appears that
Donna made the list, so it's not a summary of what they are. It's just sort of...
The first one Stantec was involved in was 951. That was a wetland mitigation, wetland restoration site.
And that was, it appears that an order of conditions was issued in 1999, an amended order of conditions was issued again in 1999, and it appears there may have been a change to the bond amount, or if it was a bond, or if it was a surety bond or cash bond. I don't even have that information. It's been amended according to this sheet in front of me, which it looks like there were 4 amendments, and then the order of conditions was recorded September 8th, 1999. It's going to require some research.
Yeah, for example, that one that you're talking about right there, that was the one, remember when MAC was trying to get the vegetation management plan, the early version of the VMP,
Yeah.
in through the commission? We actually went and got a superseding order from DEP, but we were still subject to your bylaw. So the whole thing fell apart even after getting a superseding order from the DEP.
Yeah.
That was back in 2002, 2001.
Yeah.
And we eventually just dropped that whole mess and came back and just filed as part of the airport in 2005, 2006. So there was an order and a process and a superseding process that we went through where nothing was ever done. It was the early version of the VMP. And then the actual version of the VMP where work was actually done was that 2006 filing.
And then there's one 1089, it appears, according to the note that's in front of me, that a COC was indeed issued on June 3rd, 03.
And that was Taxiway Foxtrot. Indeed, there was an as-built plan and everything done on that one. So
I think that my humble opinion is that if we just have a special condition in the order of conditions that pertains just and exclusively to this list and require the applicant to satisfy the commission as to the status of all these orders, but I don't think it would do anybody any good to penalize the project in front of us based upon this, because there's always the chance that there could be any number of errors anywhere in the system. So
the ones that are hurting us are the first three. They predate Stantec or Mike. And they're the ones that we're having trouble.
It appears one of them,
finding
work was never done.
Yeah.
So those should be easy to close out with an invalid order of conditions.
if this is even half correct, you've got some money in there, so you probably want to chase that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
well, I know it's not ours, but this is the reason we take your money, to assure that you get the project completed, so. Good motivation.
Probably is.
Who's ever, you guys can fight over the money once you satisfy the opening, the orders, so. All right, let's see what else happens here. Anything else, Deb?
That's it.
John?
Yeah, there was I remember some discussion last time about erosion controls, fairly steep slopes. And it was, several minutes, and I think Mr. Manzi was involved with it as the chair. But are those all resolved? Because it looks like there's still an item on page 3 of your letter. Item number 4 seems to be unclear where wattles will be installed and stakes and all that business.
So we thought the accounting of the stakes, stickers, and wattles was pretty good on the existing plan sheet, and it was plan sheet 905. And in fact, I handed in new sheets of that tonight, and you'll see in our. Do you have our response letter on Thank you. And that plan sheet is part of that. So we added additional notes on the plan sheet that pertain to this live stake, stickers, and wattles to give an exact accounting of where they were going in. I don't think Michael Andrade had ever dealt with those types of plantings. So we added additional information and submitted a final new plan sheet tonight to clarify that. And so that's how we addressed his final outstanding comment there.
Which sheet would that be?
Yeah, I think it was sheet C. I have it right here. It was
I have a 6A. I have a
C906.
906.
So C906.
Yeah, okay, first one.
Yep, and there's a new revision date on it. And in there, all those notes in the channel cross-section show exactly where these different plantings are to go. So we clarified that even beyond our last submission from 2 weeks ago. We've actually even updated the plan one more
sheet are we
time
on?
further. Keep going. It's near the end of the. There's an actual plan sheet in here.
This is where the comment
That's the
is.
comment, but
That's
the
the
plan
comment.
sheet, how we addressed it was right here. So this is revised sheet C906, and I provided Jennifer with copies of this tonight to insert into the final plan set. And the questions were, and you can see in the bottom right there, that slope showing the different stake, stickers, and wattles. We gave more detail relative to the channel bottom, where they're going to go relative to the channel bottom, and also how many are being installed per linear feet of new channel. So all that new information is now on this sheet. So anyone can take it now, get a direct number of each one of those items, and how far up the bank each one of them is to be installed. And so we've clarified that and then supplied a new sheet. Even though thought it was passable last time, but now it's fairly concrete. Anybody could take it and do an accounting of those particular items. So that's how we addressed it.
Okay, I have no more questions.
Doug?
I have no questions.
Do you have anything, any concern, other than the list, other than the live list that you gave me? Anything at all? Are you satisfied with the application as it stands?
I mean, I've been following the process, but we've been relying on the consultants to review this. This is, as we...
So the consultant hasn't communicated to you any concerns?
Any
There
additional
appears to be
concerns, no.
consensus. All right.
I was on vacation last week, and he's on vacation this week.
Yeah.
He did send me an email saying if, we wanted him to review the order of conditions for any special conditions he thought would be pertinent. There was talk about, I highlighted some of the things he mentioned at the last meeting when he presented about compaction reporting and some of the things the commission might want to see.
Scott's has some good thoughts on this.
Also, they had some input on who should be monitoring the work during the stream reconstruction.
Do we have a clean 21-day period between now and the next meeting?
We do, yeah. It's
In other words-
14 days to the next meeting.
In other
So we
words-
could meet for the next meeting and still.
And you could prepare a draft OOC,
Yep.
and instead of closing it now, leave it open, and then we could close an issue the same night. It would be a net either way. Any objection, would anybody here on that plan at all?
No.
Leave it open for,
Yeah, leave it open.
okay. Are there any abutters to the airport project that want to speak? And no abutters answer.
Okay.
So, Randy, I'm going to recommend that we just continue it till the next meeting, and we can clean it all up and close it and issue on the same night.
On behalf of the applicant, definitely, we concur.
Okay. Motion to continue, please.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I guess just that, are you going to get me some kind of timeline or the way you think this might play out as far as, I want to review too. Donna compiled this list. I'll go back and make
Yeah.
sure it's inclusive of everything. I don't know if you noticed anything.
I've already
that-
added 2 to it. I have a spreadsheet back in my office.
I was going to say, I would be concerned there might be more. And knowing that there's one on there that's already listed as closed doesn't give me a lot of confidence. in that
So
either.
no harm if we leave it open.
Right.
All that can be done. We can establish that special condition for you.
No problem.
It benefits both of us. You guys get the cash, and we get the compliance.
Yeah. And we like to wipe our books clean, too, so.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There is none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Randy.
Thanks.
I'm going to return the chair back to Mr. Napoli.
Thank you. Next order of business is 242-1674, 121 Mill Pond.
So at the last hearing on this, we reviewed the phasing plan, and we discussed there's not full compliance with the stormwater management requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act. So we had talked about possible mitigation and planting on site for the increase in parking. I had made some suggestions to the applicant. I have them here, and I don't think we've reached full agreement on what the mitigation should be, but at least in talking in the field with the chairman and looking at the site, we talked about a zone of natural vegetation along the stream. We had originally discussed along the entire stream. That was sort of viewed as possibly cost prohibitive. So I had suggested a smaller area, which includes from the head wall where the stream comes out of the pond to the footbridge, and then the second area being an area along the pond, sort of also open to runoff and lawn right up to the edge of the pond. So those were recognize that they may not be able to plant them all, but that it's possible that they could be monumented and just allowed to return to a natural state. There is lots of natural vegetation, especially along the edge of the stream, not so much along the edge of the pond. But with that, I'll turn it back to you.
I would like to say something before the applicant speaks. Jen and I went out to do a site review with the engineer, and was pretty much agreed on what we were going to do. I don't think we were asking for a lot. I think we bent over pretty good with them as far as making them compliant to the new stormwater regs, which we kind of let it go. I observed all the parking spaces, and there was little or no impact, so I kind of let that go. We talked about phasing, and they did that. I don't think Jen's original planting plan is excessive. I think from what I'm hearing, is they're reluctant, even her adapted plan. So I think the applicant should reconsider what they're going to ask for. If they don't, that's fine, but I just want to let the commission know we did do a site review, and I don't think us as a commissioner are asking for anything excessive considering what we're giving up.
Mr. Chairman, if I can ask you a question. So there is a planting plan that's been proposed.
Well, we discussed it.
Okay. But
And,
it's just
and,
been,
and he was amicable to what we were asking for.
Sure.
And I guess he went to his client. His
Yeah.
client is reluctant because
Sure.
they're saying it's too expensive.
Yeah.
It would be a lot more expensive to have them comply to the new stormwater regs. So I think
I think where this is a notice of intent, we do have the option to issue a condition pertaining to such, and I'm getting the sense that just may be the direction to go in.
well, I just wanted to give you my opinion.
Sure.
And give them the opinion of what I have, and
Sure.
and where the chips lie, that's where it lie.
Point taken.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just again, for the record, I'm Andy Street. I'm with Civil Design Consultants, and with me tonight is Bill Anderson. He's the president of the association with the Mill Pond Townhomes. I believe, as was just discussed, I believe most technical items have been discussed and developed. We responded to some concerns like the phasing plan, things like that. But Bill wanted to come tonight to speak in particular to this planting proposal that's on the table tonight. So Bill, I don't know if you have anything you
Well,
want
first of all, I'd like to say that, we value these wet areas as much or more, I think, than the Conservation Commission. We always look out for them. We try not to intrude too much on them. But I've been at Mill Pond since 1981, and our grass plan and our cutting plan has not changed in the time I've been there. There are some areas that we had already intended to add specimens to, and that is the area around the fence at the outflow of the original powerhouse. We added a fence there because it's an extremely dangerous area for children. I caught two youngsters that didn't live at Mill Pond one day that had climbed the old fence and were fishing in that strip. If they fell in that area, there's no way for a child to get out of there. So we put a new fence around it, and we have intended to put a ground cover, but we're very reluctant to put any specimens of any height at all there because we need to see into the area. We're certainly willing to put ground cover there. And we're also willing to put at the end of, on what we call driveway 17, which is the long driveway going down. If you want to move that back a little bit, scroll to the left.
There's no
Scroll to the right.
left or right on this. These are just each one.
Okay, that area right there. We're willing to do some plantings there for sure. The bank is losing and has lost some viable trees there, and the bank is in some areas crumbling, and it needs to be strengthened, so we'll certainly do that. As far as the area down by the brook, from the outflow of the old powerhouse down to the bridge, which is in this rectangle that you see right here, you're asking us to put specimens for 10 feet on each side of that strip. That's 413 feet long, so that's 8,000 square feet. And we don't have the budget to do that. I mean, we just, we could not comply. We certainly couldn't comply this year. We'd have to plan it into our maintenance for the next, say, 5 years, which we could do. But to make this a part of the order of conditions, my personal opinion, and I think that I speak for the homeowners, is excessive.
I don't think planting is not what the requirement would be. The commission on their orders, all of their orders, throughout town, have a 25-foot no disturb zone associated with all wetlands. On properties where a 25-foot no disturb zone doesn't exist and it's able to exist, the commission often requires the applicant to either revegetate that area or allow it to grow back natural. What they're saying here is they recognize this complex has been here for quite some time, and you have in many areas no disturb zone. You mow right up to the edge of the pond, you mow right up to the edge of the brook. They want you to potentially, I'm not putting words in their mouths, and I'm sure they'll tell you what they want, to either do some planting or to stop mowing. And what they usually require is some kind of monumentation, posts with signage or whatever, to where that zone of natural vegetation would be. And the purpose of that is to provide a better buffer to the resource area. It reduces pollutants, it attenuates, the flows into the brook, stops erosion. There's lots of reasons to do it, but it doesn't have to be at much of any cost to the condominium association necessarily, unless you wanted the area to look specific in some way, whether you wanted to see shrubs, or if it comes back wild, what comes back will be what grows there.
I don't have any problem with letting it come back naturally and putting up signage that says it's an environmental zone. And I think we can add a few plantings year by year as time goes by to bring it back and make it attractive. But we certainly can't plant the whole area. I mean, that's just beyond our budget.
We wouldn't require you to do it all in 1 year. If we were to issue a condition that pertained to revegetation and planting or a cease and desist in a certain area, it would be phased over a period of time. Our goal is not to hurt anybody. We're not trying to punitively or financially hurt anybody. We're just trying to get these areas back when we can, because it's good for everybody.
It is good.
It's good for the groundwater, and it's good for the wildlife, and it's good for the residents. We can both accomplish the same mission without hurting anybody. I'm sure of that.
As I said, we'll certainly stop mowing. We'll instruct our landscaper to stop mowing. We'll set up a line, and we'll put signage in. But for this year, that's all we can do, really, because we don't have any money in the budget to do this.
We can help you with that. Jen can help you with that. We can start the plan out so that it doesn't break the bank.
Okay.
Deb?
No questions.
Jen?
Yeah, and just a few comments about, really to add to what Jen was talking about as far as our bylaw goes, 25-foot no disturb zone to water, any wetlands, not even to mention a river, which this is a river in town. I think we're consistent with each other. You value the wetlands, as you stated earlier. As well we do. This is how we do it. It's based on science. It's based on many years of practice, and it works. I agree with Commissioner Manzi when he says we can make things work, we can phase things in. I do want to suggest one thing, though. That's a pretty big area, as you mentioned, as well as the other one. One of the things you run into when you don't plant it, when you don't try and control it and get it if you try and let it resort naturally, you'll tend to get more invasive species in there, which means it's not as high quality a mitigation area as it should be, as we both want it to be. So I don't want to set up a conflict between us, between your association and the commission, because if that gets overrun with invasives, which is very common, especially where it has a lot of sun, where it doesn't have a lot of plantings, that will create a conflict with us. We'll ask you to do more maintenance than you'd want to do, which is costly. It can be costly. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think what Jen has suggested as a mitigation measure to compensate for some practical leniency that we've applied to your project, on the stormwater management side of things. I think what she has suggested is practical. It's the way things are done, and they're done that way because they work. So, I think phasing is a great idea. The density may not be as much as the cost may not be as high as you think, okay? But anyway, I do support the suggestion that we continue working together to make this work. I think we are both pulling in the same direction, but I just wanted you to have that that lookout, that invasives really are, very noticeable, very bad for a small area like this. And where we are granting some leniency on the parking and the stormwater management part of it, it's kind of essential that this mitigation area work the way it should. So I would just ask you to consider complying as much as you possibly can with the planting plan that has been suggested. And that's all my comments.
Well, is there a planting plan for these areas?
I just recommended a list of shrub species that they could plant.
Okay, so they have something that they can go by in a sense.
Mhm.
And as long as it can be put in as a condition that it be marked off and mowing cease those areas immediately, then that planting plan can be implemented over a few years. Well, you should be able to budget for it.
Yes, we can.
And to make it
We
part
can
of
budget for
the order, so it can run and you will be able to do it. So you don't have to necessarily close the order out in a year, but you could keep it going for 3 years and then complete the planting within that time frame and then close the order.
When you say that it probably won't cost as much as I think it will, what did you have in mind for a figure?
Well, I think with shrubs, you don't have to, we're not talking full-blown specimen trees or, you'll be able to get, 5-gallon pots or 3 to 4 foot high plants of shrubs to plant in these areas for far less than maybe some of the mature plantings that you have on the property. I'm not really sure what you were anticipating. 10 feet wide is not a
Right.
width where you're going to be, planting hundreds of things. If you're planting them 8 to 10 feet on center, they're going to be spaced throughout in natural vegetation. It just kind of limits the amount of room for, as Jack pointed out, invasives to come in.
In your experience, a 5-gallon pot of plants, say this first one, your Almus incana rugosa, speckled alder, how much would that cost for the nursery? Just roughly.
I didn't look at it's going to vary widely, and if you bought in bulk, it's going to be cheaper than if you go and buy. Per shrub, you're sometimes talking in the teens per 5-gallon. I can't say exactly. I didn't look at I have a price list, and I can provide you with that if you'd like to see one.
That would be helpful.
If I could also add, too, that typically for mitigation areas like these, the plantings go in, and then they're monitored for a matter of years, usually a couple of years, 4 growing seasons. And so, that's with the thought that these plants, they're not mature plants, they're little plants, and some of them die. And so, if it's well cared for and all the plants survive, maybe 80% of them might survive. But the assumption is that they're generally small plants. That's why in an area like this, it's typically monitored for a couple of years. And so the initial outlay is, like Jen says, fairly small plants, which are inexpensive. And the expectation is that they survive at a reasonable proportion, and it grows into something that functions.
Well, I think you'll find too that there are already the speckled alder is already growing on site. So is some of the other plants I recommended, the red osier dogwood. These things are already out there, and some of them are going to come up if you allow the bank to regrow. I think by planting it, you may get some lesser amount of undesirable material coming in. That would be the goal in planting.
You do have a landscape contractor there, correct?
Yes, we do. We also have a gardener, so.
Well,
The other thing too, do you have any people that live in the facilities that may be into gardening, that may be willing to go out there and plant the things that you provide?
We've tried.
That's. They would do it?
I appreciate your suggestion, but it doesn't seem to work in our complex.
Why don't we continue it to the next meeting?
But
In the meantime, you could speak to a land, so you have a cost, because you don't have a cost. You might be thinking in your head it's going to cost you $30,000, or
well,
I'm just throwing a number out there. I don't think it's going to be overwhelming for what we're looking for.
Also, the order of conditions is good for 3
All
years,
of
right?
the work you got done in small changes.
perhaps
And you can
what,
extend it twice.
Right.
What I was just saying, I don't know if I'm helping or hurting here, but an order of conditions is good for 3 years. And it can be extended twice, so potentially you have a 5-year order.
okay.
So, we like to see this stuff get done right away,
Sure,
but-
of course.
but if you follow me.
Yeah. Well, let me reiterate what I'm proposing and see if that's okay with you people. We will let it go natural 10 feet back from each bank for the entire length, from the outflow of under the clubhouse to the bridge, okay, for this year. And we will also buy plants and do some planting right there in that area that you're looking at right there. That's at the end of my building, in fact. At the end of the garden, we'll go around to the edge of the end of that building, which is building 13, and we'll put plantings in there, some of the plants that are recommended here. We'll also put a ground cover down near that fence to hold that area. That's a very shady area, but we've tried to get grass to grow. It won't grow in there, and we've been thinking about putting something in there anyway. But we don't want to obstruct the view into that fenced area.
I don't think the fenced area is an area of concern. You have 6-foot-high walls in that sluiceway there.
Right.
The water doesn't flow overland and into that area. It's actually uphill.
Right.
So from a mitigation perspective, there's nothing to be gained in that particular area.
Okay.
If it's ornamental for you and you want to do something around the fence, that's fine. But that isn't, the commission's looking for areas where water's flowing overland and directly
All right.
entering the resource area.
Now, is there any other area than these 2 areas that you want me to bring back to natural?
Well, we had the Hawkway, but the buckthorn will take that over.
We talked about some planting at Harkaway, but it's largely, you already have a huge invasive issue with knotweed over there. That's all grown in right along the stream. So I don't think that's something we want to have them tackle. It would be extensive. So these areas, you can start from scratch. You have the ability to, turn them into something desirable, and also to monitor them if something undesirable comes in.
All right. And from year 2 through year 5, we will definitely put it in the budget to get to some of these species in these areas. so that we don't get the invasive species coming in. In the meantime, we'll just monitor it. We do get that Japanese vine in there, that's terrible.
So it'd be something like a vegetation management plan.
Oriental bittersweet?
Yeah, I don't
What's
know if
that?
You get bittersweet? I'm not sure.
I guess it's
Vine.
bittersweet, I don't know what to call it, but it's horrible stuff.
So Jen, could we, as part of the order of conditions, we could institute a VMP that they could follow?
Yeah, I mean, well, we could lay that out in conditions in accordance with what they're talking about. The other issue is we still haven't gotten comments from DEP, and
I checked as of 5 o'clock today, and still not.
and you didn't get a call from
And
anyone.
returned voicemails and not answering their phone and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we don't usually wait for it, but where this was such an extensive project, I figured maybe they would be,
State is upset, they'll appeal.
they'll appeal.
Do you
That's true.
suspect there's an issue with the license?
No.
They're just behind.
Yes, we've
It
seen
happens.
both ways, yeah, that-
Was it your intention, Jennifer, to have us close tonight, or, yeah, if it is, I mean, that's fine, we can, and,
It sounds like that's,
Well, you get the decision in place for the next meeting anyways.
I've drafted
I
a
think we-
decision. We may need to do some reworking of the wording of the mitigation conditions, but
Okay. If you're comfortable closing, then that's fine.
I guess my only concern is DEP, just because they're hoping to put this out to bid soon and get a contractor on board for the spring, assuming that it cleared here, but if the
and we just have,
DEP...
we have no control over DEP.
No, I know you don't, I'm just saying if we
Would you
close
prefer
it
that
though...
would you prefer that we leave it open until the next meeting and give DEP a chance to reply?
Well, it sounds like if the decision is ready to go anyway and that it's all in one shot next meeting, that might be the way to go.
okay.
Just give
And
them
I
a
can,
chance
I
and
can
then
try
we
to make some contact. I didn't
Yeah.
have time today, but I can try to get in touch.
You know, an appeal obviously is just going to take far longer than us responding to their comments in the next
Right.
2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it
That
is.
sounds reasonable, so,
We don't usually close them
no, that's,
for the, without DEP,
if it'll help.
No, we have a
them,
number. They just haven't issued comments, and where this was BLSF and Riverfront and
All right, that'll give,
stormwater, it seems
Right.
like something they
all right, we can.
might have said something
I'll
on.
move we continue to the next meeting, and that'll give everybody a chance to tweak it.
So, and they can also.
We can also work on the conditions.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
And all that stuff.
Okay.
Right.
I don't know if there were any abutters, and we do have
Are there any,
people.
oh, sorry.
A motion and a second to continue?
Any abutters?
Oh, I'm sorry, are there any abutters here? No.
Okay, sorry.
There are butters here, I'm one.
I-
You didn't mean-
There are
No
some
one
other
would
ones,
comment.
there's some other ones in the back, I believe, but, okay, we have a motion and a second to continue.
So all
All
of
those in favor, I'm sorry.
Aye.
I second.
Al and Deb were the motion
Opposed?
previously.
And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is 242-1676. We'll do one at a time, right? Or you better off, Jen? Yeah, she wants those photos back.
Jack, can we have those photos back for the file?
Oh, the other ones, thank you.
Don't
Yeah.
get them all together. We're good.
Jim will start. I think they're going to start with Lot 1. Yep, so at the last meeting on Lot 1 and Lot 2, there was discussion of permanent monumentation, as well as making sure all appurtenances were on there. A foundation drain has been added. The deck is shown. I think the deck was shown before, but it was within the existing, it was all one layout. They've sort of separated it out now. The stone wall is on there, slightly different than...
No, this has been added now.
No, right, but they had discussed something contiguous. It's slightly different than what they had talked, but it is in the location at the edge of tree line that was discussed at the last meeting. They've added a dewatering detail to the plan, and I think The only thing Mr. Manzi had asked for was to see silt fence backing the silt sock, and I didn't see that on the plan, but then...
No, and we didn't add that to the plan. If there are certain areas that exceed certain slope requirements, and we'd prefer if that would be added to special conditions. I don't know if you have a threshold for slopes exceeding a certain amount that require double erosion controls. These are, for the most part, 5-to-1 slopes in the back of the property there. So they're not terribly steep, and you've got a good... Between the limit of work and the proposed stone wall, the 25-foot separation, there's quite a bit of flat area there. So I don't see it as being this lot being a particular erosion concern. But if there's something additional that you'd like to add in the order of conditions, we'll certainly comply with that.
The problem that I had was the height of the wattle.
Yep.
Is, in my opinion, not adequate to control any type of soil migration should it occur. So that was the reason why I had asked for the wattle to be backed up with trenched silt fence, because if some type of migration should happen, it just needs to be stopped.
Sure.
And we've seen it happen at times when we don't expect it.
Sure.
And when you have hay bales, and I understand the reason for not wanting hay bales, you don't want invasives in there, but the hay bales, you get
taller,
you get 2.5 feet, almost
Sure.
3 feet of height out of them, as opposed to 8 or 10 inches out of a wattle. So
Sure.
it's just standing on its own. It's not adequate.
That's fine, and my understanding from the previous meeting was that it was only required in areas where there were steep slopes close to, the 25-foot.
We don't have a number. We don't have a number
So-
on the slope that there isn't a trigger.
So if there's, I'm just requesting that be added to the special conditions, and we'll certainly comply to that if that's needed, if you need to back that up. And if you want to have, if we can add a note to the plan to back these up with siltation fence, that's fine too. But it's not an issue. This is a minor construction issue. So
I mean, it's a pre-construction.
to install
It's a
those,
pre-construction issue.
That's fine.
It'll likely, if you leave it kind of open-ended, it'll likely just become a pre-construction condition that will be determined at a meeting before any ground
Sure.
is broken.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying, that you want some discussion in certain areas. Jen can go out there and I'm sure handle that, but that would just tie things up if you have to wait for the meeting, and then if she makes that determination, then it has to be accomplished before you move any ground.
If it's incorporated into the order of conditions, then we'll do it before the pre-construction meeting, so that would be fine.
Okay. I think I understand. I thought you were looking at some kind of discretionary authority to...
No. If you want to have it the entire length, that's fine too. I just interpreted it as in this particular lot. There was an area in Lot 2 that I could see where it would be needed, but
Right. I follow you.
I just didn't interpret your comments correctly, apparently. So
Okay. All right. We're still just on Lot 1, right?
just Lot 1. Yep.
All right. What about, Jen, you had mentioned something about the stone wall on Lot 1.
Well,
Is there
my
a gap?
concern was it doesn't follow the 25 all the way to the lot line, which I know Sean had mentioned at the prior meeting, more in specific to Lot 2 than Lot 1, but it ends.
So it doesn't extend all the way to the property line in that location because it's very dense shrubs right there. So it would require clearing to put
is that the area
yeah,
where
that's the
shrubs
spot.
were? Okay.
So we stopped it there, and then there's a gap. There's a couple of gaps. I mean, I know that on Lot 1 there was discussion that maybe we could just do monumentation and not require the stone walls. So I thought this was a good compromise. We're proposing the stone wall. It's got gaps in it to allow access to the back if property owner wants to walk back to the stream for any reason, but it incorporates most of the back of the lot, and it's going to be very clear and apparent where that 25-foot zone is. But we stopped it. You can see where it curls around, where it borders Lot 2. It just stops there, and it goes right through some dense shrubs right there. So if we can extend it to the lot line if you like, but it just requires additional clearing to do that.
I see it now. I see it right here, this area here. Right.
Most of the rest of that area is pretty open, and the stone wall can sort of weave through trees.
Right here.
Yep.
I mean, my memory and the intention of the comment that was made at the last meeting was to have a continuous stone wall, to not have a gap. The discussion on the gap was over at Lot 2, where you had requested an access path that could remain mowed to give the future residents access to the pond if they wanted to recreational purposes on the pond. Specifically, ice skating was asked.
I think this one we discussed as well, you know, so that the back part of the property could be accessible to the owner by foot. So, you know, there's. Do you want to add anything to that?
I'd love to add something, in all due respect to the commission here. I sat there and listened to the applicant just before, and I heard a association, which is much larger than two lot owners, talk about a bill that's not even, I can promise you, it's not even $5,000 that this board, with the plan that you guys are looking at. And I don't think no one's trying to go into the wetlands, and I know that 2 weeks ago there was conversations, and I mean, I'll let people speak tonight when they want to. Actually, both owners of the land are here tonight. That they were not with us 2 weeks ago. I mean, I'm a 30-year builder, and I've never. I'll be, in all due respect to the commission, I know this wasn't just put on the potential requirement for this lot. I guess North Andover has done this in the past. It was news to me. I have never seen it. Okay. So, I, as the builder-developer, clearly understand the rationale to protect the wetlands and make sure that people, after I build their home, know where they should not go beyond. And there's different ways for monumentation. And I just listened how the other applicant was just treated beforehand, and Mr. Manzin, in all due respect, there was, I think it was actually Mr. Napoli that mentioned 2 weeks ago that said, well, I don't see the brook that's at the rear of Lot 1. I'm not as concerned as that as the pond in Lot 2. So maybe there's other ways we can talk about that. I mentioned, well, what about some sort of a post and rail fence? And I believe you said, I don't like post and rail fence because they just rot. Someone just move them. So that was my direction, if you will, to not Mary's. It was nice enough that Jennifer came out and met us. We did another walk out the lot in the snow, and so I figured, when I thought if we came up with put some stone wall, that right now there's nothing there. I mean, it's just how that land is how the Busby families had it since 1950, and what we were proposing was, as I'm looking at is about 80 to 90% of that area. So it should be pretty clear to anybody, you know, what that delineation is.
Ira, you mentioned your experience as a builder. Let me give you some of ours. We've been here a long time. A lot of us have been on this commission for more than 20 years.
Yep.
We all live in town. We've lived here a long time. What happens is, when a new house gets built and a family moves in, they don't stay. And people buy and sell, people move. And unless there is a permanent delineation, a permanent monument to prevent activities in the area that we don't want, it happens. Whether it's a shed appears, or something gets constructed, or something gets dug up, something gets dumped. We could give you the whole litany of what happens.
Well, I agree with you. I've seen it happen everywhere.
So what history has taught us is the best thing to do is put something there that can't be moved, or is very unlikely to be moved, and that's a stone wall. Stone walls don't get moved, and they don't rot, they don't fall away, and they are a permanent marker to say, this is where you don't go. That's the best defense that we've had to protect areas that we want protected. I know all about the Busby property. I've been aware of the property for many years. Mr. Busby lived there and managed it a certain way, and now that there's new construction proposed and new activities proposed, it's up to us to protect the areas that need to be protected. So stone walls are the best the best protection that we found historically.
So why wouldn't you put stone walls all around that last applicant's?
Well, that last applicant, it's a different situation than yours. It's a different area. It's a different resource area, and we're not done with that applicant. That is still open. So I'm pleased that you're concerned about that.
Well, no, it's not that I'm concerned. I'm just looking to equal treatment, for lack of any other words.
So you have a brand-new project. The commission, on brand-new projects, when they're starting from scratch, have always required stone walls. Brand-new subdivisions, brand-new house lots, things built in 1960-something or 1972, those buildings don't even comply with the 50-foot setback. So it's very hard to, if you put a wall along the length of their 25-foot no-disturb zone, it's in there, it's practically in their cellars. It doesn't, you can't go back. You can try, and that's what we're trying to do with them, is get back as much as we can, but we can't monument the 25. It would take up most of the property.
It's also not a
setback didn't exist when the property was built.
But it's also not a construction project. They're repaving their parking lots.
Yeah. So this is
so what our goal is, and Mary, I know you understand what our goal is here.
Yep.
So I don't think that we're being unreasonable in our request.
No, and we're proposing the wall, and again, this is a redevelopment of a site that was a previously existing home here. It's being torn down and rebuilt, but it is a previously developed site. And we're proposing a stone wall. The only thing that's different is that there are some gaps in it to allow the property owner to be able to walk beyond it and use that back part of the property if they wanted to.
Sure. So you could install. Maybe we'd consider a gate. From one end of the stone wall to the other.
It doesn't have to be as wide as it is.
Sure,
You could, if
it was somewhat arbitrary. It doesn't extend to the property line because of the clearing that was required. We created a gap in the middle of it. I'm not sure what the thinking was on the left side.
On the left side, because you're on town property, so you should go through a town meeting or get a town manager to give you permission to build a stone wall on town property.
You're not on town property until you hit the...
Chestnut Street?
No. See how
that's the right of way.
Yeah, but see how that's the setback. So
that's the right of way.
See how it ends
No,
right there?
that's the setback, property line setback.
Yeah. It doesn't. The bold line is the right of way on Chestnut. So you're shy of 20 feet or so of the.
Correct.
Of the.
In the wall goes on the other side of that bold line. Correct.
No.
No, it doesn't.
No.
So.
No, that's the tree line. That green line is the tree line. And see, just below the green line, there's those little circles.
Yes.
So the stone wall ends just before you get to Chestnut Street. There. This doesn't work on the screen.
Okay.
But I can show you in the plan.
So the stone wall, is that on the edge on Chestnut Street? Is that on the edge of?
It stops right
I see
here.
that right. I'm talking about where's it start on the street on Chestnut Street?
This is Chestnut. That's
Right.
the right of way right there.
Right.
It stops. There's no stone wall right here. So it starts right here.
Right, but isn't there a stone wall along Chestnut Street?
Yes.
Yeah, there is, but that's Chestnut Street.
But they're
That's
not talking
existing.
about doing
The
anything with that.
right-of-way line is Chestnut Street.
They're not talking about doing anything with that.
Talking about the
Just
backyard.
this gap right here is they're talking about closing and putting a gate right here.
So, I mean, if you're requesting passive access to the back area, passive meaning walking, then we could, I'm sure that there's a chance we would agree to a gate, but it would have to be no gap in the wall. We just...
Yeah, and that's different than what was discussed at the last meeting, because the last meeting we were talking
Right.
about some relaxed kind of condition for Lot 1, either post and rail fence or monumentation, not necessarily a stone wall, is what the consensus of the board that I perceived at the last meeting. So that's why this is proposed in the way it is. And if that is different now, then we will have to revise the plan.
I don't share your memory. I don't see it being different at all. There may have been discussion, there may have been some talk about it, but I don't perceive it as being different at all. But
Okay.
I'm going to
Do you have any questions, Doug?
send it to them.
I do remember, we were running some stuff on Lot 1. And I agree, we did do that, but we didn't say that you didn't have to put it there. Because I know one of the commissioners that was here would not say, forget it.
Sean was missing for the first half of
Right.
Lot 1. I do have in the minutes, because I wrote the minutes today, and you did mention leniency on Lot 1. You were the only commissioner to mention that, because I pretty much write down everything they say. And when Sean arrived and the discussion was on Lot 2, his verbiage was specifically that he likes to see things contiguous and go straight to the property line.
And the opening that you have in the back of Lot 1, I don't have a problem having just an opening. It's just that when an opening is 12 feet wide, or 10 feet wide, I don't have to scale, but I mean, that warrants vehicle traffic. I mean, a 6 foot.
Oh, gosh, no, yeah. no,
Well,
yeah.
well, you know what I'm saying? We're not saying
Yeah.
the builder or the developer
Yeah.
or the first homeowner or the second one.
Yeah.
So, you know, a 6 foot opening with no gate, so you know, you can't get a vehicle through there.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, I don't mind openings and walls.
I don't see why I have much choice, but I don't want to sound argumentative, but I guess it's a recommendation. So when someone goes in this town for something, shouldn't that be like part of the handout?
Which we what? Excuse me?
But obviously this board.
What we have in this town is a 25-foot no disturb and a 50-foot no build.
Correct.
That's part of the handout.
Absolutely.
So no disturb means no disturb. That's what it means. So we're segregating that area so that there's no disturbance.
I understand, Mr. Mincy, but why wouldn't you just sit back if that's the rule in North Andover, and that is to be shown on all plans with stone walls? Why wouldn't you do that?
Because not every situation is the same, and we take these on a case-by-case basis. There's no hard and fast rule that applies to everything all the time. There are grades that are different. There are forested woodlots that are different. There's vegetation that's different. The soils and rock outcrops. There's always something that's different that separates every lot from the next. When we feel it's necessary, that's when we condition the stone wall. That's what we do. We use the science of the lot, and we have a wetland scientist that works for us, and that's what we go by.
But on Lot 1, I don't think we're asking for a lot. We're just asking that the rear opening be closed slightly, which could be, like I said, on the scale of,
Looks
say...
like 40 feet wide between the opening on Lot 1 and Lot 2.
No, I'm talking about the one behind behind the house.
This one.
Close that down and maybe 4 feet wide.
No, that's a
Allow
20 scale
someone to walk
plan.
through.
That's a 20 scale plan, so, or I don't know what this is anyway.
15 feet.
Yeah, so it's about 15 feet to the property line on Lot 2, and this is about maybe a 12-foot opening right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's 6, I think 6 is more, would be more than
So
enough.
we extend it through the brush onto Lot 2, we extend it to the Chestnut Street. 'Cause it doesn't go all the way to Chestnut Street.
I think it was,
No, not
It
on that
was-
side.
no, it's not thick on the other side, but on this side it was rhododendrons, maybe? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was.
Mr. Chairman, I think what you're asking for a gap of some kind in the wall
Sure.
so that there's access.
Yeah.
So, very simply, if we want to agree upon the size of a gap, that's all we do is agree upon the
Well,
size
that's what
of
I
the
said. I
gap.
just asked them to reduce it.
So reduce it down to, I don't know,
I'd say-
whatever the commission thinks is a reasonable gap
I think
for
6
walking
feet.
past through.
I told Jen today a 6-foot maximum.
So,
Okay.
You can go from wherever you want.
no, I can live with a 6-foot gap if that's what you want for passive recreation. I just try, as Jack mentioned, we're trying to prevent any type of machinery or
Right.
anything from dumping to whatever. It happens. It may not happen with this builder or this owner, but down the road it can, and it does. And then we end up with a cleanup project later on. And I'm certain you've seen it yourself in
Yeah.
business.
I know the town in the past has maintained that brook back there, and I don't know how they accessed it, but this would prevent any access from that direction anyway in the
Maintain the
future.
brook, Howard?
The town doesn't maintain.
They don't do it
the-
anymore?
The town hasn't maintained brooks in over 30 or 40 years. In a minute.
Buddy Steele ran down there with a backhoe probably about 15, 16 years ago.
I think Buddy
Okay.
Steele I think he's been dead longer than that, but I understand you're right. Buddy was probably the guy
Yeah.
that did it.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
Did he go through? Did he go through your lot
Buddy hasn't been driving a backhoe in a long time.
Because the town has an easement to get in onto that brook.
from Chestnut Street?
Because when he came in and did it, he destroyed all the property stakes that were going down the brook.
Oh yeah.
And then they came back, you know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the town doesn't own a legal easement.
Yeah, so that's not a non-issue, so forget that. I didn't, yeah.
It's definitely a non-issue,
Non-issue.
especially,
I know Sean's not here, but I shouldn't speak for him, but I know he wanted to see the wall connected. I think that was a major point on his part.
We can certainly make that change.
Okay. So aside from that, I don't have
I know
any
that
issue.
DEP had no comments. We do have a file number. I don't know if there are any other issues.
Yeah, okay, so just so I'm clear on it too, because we've been talking about a lot of things and pointing, but, you know, on the map that's displayed, we're looking at the stone wall toward the top of the plan. Right under the word stone, on that stone wall designation, is an opening that will be no more than 6 feet. Okay.
is that the opening we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not talking about the opening that goes from lot 1 to lot 2?
No, we're going to
correct?
close that.
No, but let's talk about that now, because that's where I'm not clear. It sounds like it wasn't proposed to be closed up, but it sounds like we're going to do that.
If you would like that to happen, we can do that. It just means
You'll
some
have to
cutting of
clear.
some brush to do
It's
it.
going to be
There's-
clear. It's going to be cleared anyway.
Well,
No,
no, that's,
No.
area is fairly open. There's not a lot of understory there, so you can make most of that wall without having to do a lot of clearing. That's just one location where it was fairly dense. So we can, it's easy enough to show it on the plan. It's a little harder to do it in the field, you know, to install it in that
That's what
corner,
the
but
plan is for,
we can
but I
certainly
mean,
do it.
I'm surprised at that, because obviously we'll be destroying, whatever that vegetation and trees are there will not be gone, so you can put a wall.
Well, Jen, you did the site review.
Well, we can,
That's what you wanna
it doesn't have to go in a straight line. It can,
Yeah.
you know, we don't have to take out trees. When we were out there in that area.
It's just a big, I think it's a big bush right there, yeah.
Right on the
property line.
25, maybe
Yeah.
a shrub, but
What kind of shrub?
I think it was a rhododendron, but
yeah.
it's hard to
Well,
say.
I think there's more than
We
one
just-
shrub there.
We stood on the
One
property
side,
line and
yeah.
looked back
Whatever.
across the
Whatever you want to
property.
do.
Yeah.
So that's-
It's a 40-foot wide gap in the wall, so that's a lot of, that's a big,
Those two
that's
trees
an
that-
awful big rhododendron.
No, that's not 40
No.
feet. That's only about 15
Tony,
feet.
It's all vegetated.
The other thing too is make it a farmer's wall. You don't have to make it a mortared wall
Yep.
or a fancy wall.
I understand.
No, no, we have a cross-section they have to follow.
No, it's not that detailed.
Make a farmer's wall.
Yeah, it's
That does the same damn thing that you're talking about.
Doug, I hear you, but I want to point out, we gave discretion to a builder in the past on how to build a quote farmer's wall, and we got 150 feet of pea stone piled up 3 feet high. So because we had one wise guy that decided to give us a pea stone wall,
Too far from it.
we designed a cross-section that
Then that
will be
contractor
followed.
doesn't know what a farmer's wall is.
No, he knew exactly what it was. He was breaking our balls, and we're not going to get our balls broken anymore. So they're going to follow the cross-section. If we say a stone wall, they're going to build it as designed. No discretionary authority on the stone wall.
Cross-section of a farmer's wall.
Okay, so
We have one. We've put a lot of work into it.
all right,
Well, I just take it off another person's plan, but that, we have plenty of nice
2 by
plans
2.
with
all right,
farmers' walls on it.
so we're in agreement that we're going to connect the wall. Okay.
Mary, what's the, there's a tree line typical label there. It's directly above where the deck is.
Yep.
And near that tree that's going to remain. What's that arrow pointing to? Doesn't seem to be pointing to anything.
Postal, I don't know why it's pointing to the side there. That doesn't make any sense.
What's that?
Foundation drain.
Well, it misses the,
No, it's over,
it
it's
misses
this,
the 30-foot.
right there, right?
Oh, right there.
That doesn't seem to be pointing to anything.
This tree line typical. It doesn't point to anything in particular.
So it probably should
That's a
be.
little error there, yeah.
Yeah. Just, no big. All right, no other questions for lot 1?
Okay. Doug, excuse me one second. Well, so does the commission open up for questions?
Doug has no questions. he said.
You have all set? Okay.
There isn't a butter that requested.
We have-
On lot
Oh.
one?
Are you in a
There's
butter
also-
or
I think
an
he-
applicant?
He's in butter.
He's a-
You're in a butter.
We haven't got
Oh,
to
you're
lot
the
two
owner.
yet.
Before
He's-
you guys spend any
Do you-
more
do you-
money.
Do you live there now?
He's on lot two.
My wife and I, Norman Wallace, my wife Janet, we bought Lot 2 from the Busby family in December. We've lived in Andover for 70 years. We're 70 years old. We wanted a new house. This was our opportunity to have a new house, which we'd never had before. We're not going to be moving out next week. All of our 3 kids live in Andover. We're here to stay. My wife is still working. We were out of town 2 weeks ago on the 10th. We were out of state, and we couldn't make the meeting. That's when we got back and we talked to Brian, and he advised us that there was some discussion about a stone wall within the property, the length of a football field at a cost of $20,000 to $25,000. I'm not in the construction business, I have no idea. But that wasn't in our budget when we bought the property and talked to him about building the house. Since then, we've asked Brian to downsize the house so we'd have enough money left to build the stone wall. But then tonight, I hear you talking to the previous applicant, and I went back and looked at the minutes of the January 13th meeting, and you had a similar problem, not with new construction, I grant you that, but you had a similar problem at 265 Summer Street. And at that meeting, the administrator states the applicant should put up more permanent wetland markers, which we intend to do. We have no plans to do anything with the wetlands. We want to protect them. Put up more permanent wetland markers along the 25-foot no disturbance edge, and she asked, what material would you use? Well, at that point, Mr. Lynch, who I understand is a commission member, recommended wooden posts. Now, the idea is permanent markers for that 25-foot zone. My budget could live with wooden posts to accomplish that goal. But to build a 2-foot by 4-foot, whatever, stone wall, I mean, I'm willing to do whatever the town bylaws and the commission decide. We'll figure out a way to do it. I'm not here for a contentious, I'm going to sue you this. That's not my intention. I just want, I guess, equal and fair treatment, and to let you guys know, we're not moving out of town anytime soon. We're here for the long haul. And I don't have any technical background or anything else to help out with this. But I'm not, at this point, it sounds like you guys are willing to put up a stone wall with a 6-foot opening. I'm going to get stuck paying for it.
Just to be clear.
If I have to do that, so be it.
That
I'll figure out how to do it.
Mr. Wallace owns Lot 2, which we haven't discussed yet, so we haven't
Right.
discussed that wall on the
No, I haven't
property
even,
yet.
I don't even know who you are. I haven't even talked to you before. I've talked to Brian.
Well, I'm telling you that we're talking about Lot
That
1, which
meeting-
is the house with the...
This is a
we're-
different,
This is a different lot.
Application.
Okay.
This
And
is the house lot next to you.
just to be clear, too, with 265 Summer Street, the issue with a permanent stone wall there is when the house was built, you guys, there's a big, wide, open field next to that you required be mowed annually to keep the field habitat. It has a management plan, and so installing walls would stop them from mowing what is a large grass meadow.
Right.
Like Mr.
We
Mann-
haven't, yeah.
Like Mr. Manson said
Another
earlier,
issue.
that's why we don't, like you said, previous, that everybody has to build a wall, because we have all different applications. We have wet meadows that have to be mowed on some properties. Some people, the tree line is so extensive on some lots that we'd be impossible to put, you have to cut half the forest down. That's why we don't have the stone walls for all different things. We've had people build walls bigger than this one. And so, I mean, it's not, you have 2 sensitive areas, and that's why we want to protect it. It's not, we're not trying to go after anybody. You know, Phil's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a long, long time, and he knows that, you know, I'm a straight guy, so we're not trying to pick you to make you a poster boy for a monster stone wall. So, but getting back to Lot 1, so we're in we have any questions on Lot 1? Still? None?
I have no questions, but I think there was a lady that wanted to
And we
talk
have an
about
abutter.
that one.
So my major concern is anything that's going to disturb land that is going to affect the brook. And contrary to the comment of the Department of Public Works never having maintained that brook, there are many neighbors that have been there for more than 20 years that can verify the fact that Mr. Sears and the crew did maintain that brook in a way that made the water flow free and clear. Since then, it has been neglected. Maybe it's because of the regulations of the wetlands or the departure of Mr. Sears, but behind our property is extremely neglected, and it is a very fragile situation right now. And as property owners, we're not really sure what we can do in order to maintain or to restore the flow of that water. But certainly it has created a delta back there, and as an abutter, my primary concern is that any movement of any of that dirt is going to change the grade, continue to change the grade of the bottom of that brook. And so that's the comment that I wanted to make as an abutter, but that is a big concern of myself as well as several neighbors that I've spoken with, that brook is difficult. It's a difficult situation right now. And so we're sort of looking for answers that can guarantee that any soil that is disturbed is not going to wind up in our backyards or our basement.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow me to.
Sure.
That's why I was talking to the consultant, the applicant's consultant, about adding trenching behind the straw wattles to prevent any potential soil migration that may get into any part of the wetland area, the no disturb area, the no build. So, you know, nobody can give you any guarantees. I mean, there's no such thing as a guarantee in the world. We don't know what's going to happen. We could have a 100-year storm event that moves all kinds of soil around. But we're trying to do the best we can to prevent that from happening, which is why we are proactive about putting up the barriers, the straw wattles and the siltation trenching fence to stop that from moving. As far as the brook's concerned, I mean, yeah, I'm going to tell you, there's nothing you can do about that brook. The only thing that can be done is if there were a culvert that went under a road that were in failure and the culvert was stopping the flow of water, then it would be incumbent upon the town to repair and replace that culvert. But as far as going in and taking soil out of the brook, it isn't happening.
But the brook stops, actually. The
Yeah.
brook stops and starts again.
Yeah, well, that's what they do.
But it hasn't always. The history of the brook is that the water road flowed free and clear,
Well,
and it no longer does.
I know, we could go way back. I mean, I have a brook that's on my property that's been there. I've lived on my property for 40 years, and I've had a brook that's been there for 100, probably 200 years. There's nothing you can do about it. And whatever the Department of Public Works did in the past is exactly that. It's in the past. Any maintenance of vegetation along the brooks hasn't happened in a very, very long time. I can assure you of that. If a homeowner has gone in and done some maintenance along the brook, they've done it at their peril. It isn't happening. And I'm unaware of any exception to the rule under the riverfront law. We have some pretty learned people here. If I'm wrong, they'll straighten me out, but I don't see it happening. But we can prevent anything from getting there from the project.
Well, this is, a different issue and a different visit and a different process, but I can assure you that the movement of the water of that brook has changed considerably in the 3 years that we've lived in the home.
Yeah.
And it's a dilemma, because I've worked with Jennifer and Heidi, and we have tried our best to prevent our backyard from being the low point, and from that brook emptying into our backyard. You can see several mini tributaries that flow from that brook into our yard now. And for you to tell me there's nothing a homeowner can do.
I don't believe there is.
Certainly the restoration of that brook is in need, because it will threaten the foundation of not only of our home, but the homes of our neighbors as well, once the silt continues to build up. And so the construction, just to get back to the topic of the night, that
Sure.
It's already fragile. The water is already pouring into the backyard. not only our backyard, but our neighbor's backyard. And the change of that brook now is no longer a brook. It splinters into the backyards. And so any kind of disturbance of that brook is going to be a major concern. And it does threaten the foundations of the homes. And there is the potential for those homes to deteriorate.
I hear you. I understand. I don't think
If I'm looking at the elevations, back there, it looks like you're gonna change a lot of, anyways, from like the stone wall to the brook. This almost, you're just pretty much around the foundations where the elevation rises. But from the back, it looks like almost no pitch. From the, let's see. You only got maybe 2 feet of pitch from the house to the brook. So I don't think it's going to be a major impact to the brook.
No, it isn't a major impact, no, but we're much higher than the brook. Where my slab's going to be?
Well, the brook is the invert's 273, and your looks like 280.
But they're not going to have, this project doesn't propose any activity
50
within...
feet away from a brook. I mean,
That's what I'm saying,
25
so I
foot no
mean-
disturb zone, and then another 50 feet from that.
I mean, there's no
25 feet from
activity.
that, so we're nowhere near.
I'm saying it's going to have no impact to the brook.
There's no question.
Right, that's what I'm trying to address her concerns. It's not like they're doing a 4-foot fill and then just dropping it off to you.
Well, I mean, the impact to the brook would be the clearing of vegetation, the more impervious area. I mean, there will be potentially more water flowing to the brook. I mean, that's what's happened all over town, is that we keep building and we confine our resources to smaller and smaller areas. There will be impacts, but they're not going to be of soil migration into the brook. They're not going to be of they're not going to be alterations of the brook.
That's what her concern was, sediment into the brook.
Also, a single-family home is not...
The flow of water, if the flow of water is increased in the brook, the flow of water permeating into the backyards is going to increase as well.
Yeah, but this, I don't think the house is going to cause...
I don't, most respectfully, I don't think so. I don't think that the construction of that house, the distance from the brook that it is going to increase the flow in that brook, honestly. I don't think so.
Well, I received a letter that I could attend and say my piece. And
We're glad...
I'm able to make a statement, and that's what I was, that's why I'm here.
Well, we did address it. So, I mean, we did look at it, because if it was going to be an issue, then we would address it. But I don't see the finished grade of the house and the amount of distance to the brook is going to impact the brook, especially with sediment.
Which lot is yours?
I think it's 19A.
She's on this plan.
On Chestnut Street.
What's your last name?
So Billings. So you
I have Billings, yeah. It's so...
on lot 2, where you can see it toward the back.
Lot number 62, according to this map. I see it.
On our deed, it's...
So you're really...
Looking for lot 2.
No, she said her last name is Billings. So if you look at...
She's on lot 2.
Right.
This is lot 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yes, I'm sorry. Your house is shown on lot 2.
That also shows the stream running through your property.
Sure does, but it doesn't.
It's a wetland. It's not a channel. That's what she's saying.
Beyond your property,
All right, let's get through lot 1 first. Do we have any more questions on lot 1? None? Okay, so we need
So we need some plan revisions, and then I'll draft it for the next meeting.
So we'll
continue until
Right,
we
so
get the revised plan, because if we
That
close
work
it, we
for you?
can't get new submissions.
So that works for you, next meeting?
Second.
Make those changes to the stone wall.
Right. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Who motioned and seconded? I'm sorry, I missed.
I motioned.
Well, I can address it on that. The only other question normally we have a construction access and a stockpiling.
They have the construction access detail on there, and stockpiling would be inside the erosion controls.
Okay. Very good. Okay, next one is, no, number, 242
75,
1675, Lot 2, Hillside Road.
So similar changes were made to this. There's a foundation drain shown in the 50-foot no build, the stone wall. Now on this one, there's a fill and a retaining wall proposed, to my understanding, right along the, so that is actually going to be above grade. So I don't.
Rather than the stone wall on that east side of the property, it's proposed a retaining wall so that they can create some fill behind it. If there's going to be a wall constructed, they wanted to be able to adjust the grades to make it flat, on an area on the side of the house. So it'll still be lawn as originally proposed. The grades are just a little bit different. But it'll be a block wall rather than a stone wall, which should serve the same purpose to mark the limit of work.
Except that on those sorts of things, people can dump over them, which I think when we had the new house on Great Pond Road, the one with the turnaround driveway, you had them put a fence on top of the wall, so that didn't happen with markers. Remember, they actually came back with the COC and the fence hadn't been installed on top of the wall.
Well, couldn't you do it to step over a 2-foot-high stone wall, too? I mean, I don't know what the difference would be.
Well,
I don't
it's just
understand
attractive towards out of sight, out of mind. So,
But that's what I mean. If it's the same.
Oh, in this
there's no
different
place to put the
material.
markers, right? So if you build up and you have a level ground, you can't mark the area as no disturb zone.
Are there markers required on the stone wall?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that.
Or, people either put them on posts on or near the stone wall, or they epoxy them to the wall itself. We've had both happen. Or they'll put
we could do that on the back of the block wall, too.
Yeah, you could put it on the side.
No, they'd be on the side that people don't see, though.
No, but at the
No,
back.
but you face it.
Right.
You just put a post and face it towards the developed
They could put a post and put the,
Yeah.
if the wall's here, put the post behind it.
Well, plus, you do see at 2 to 3 inches, there's a lip on most of these ready block type walls.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of place to put a monument.
So that wall, that's the wall here in the back.
On the right of the driveway.
On the right of the driveway, it looks like blocks on the plan?
Yes.
Yes.
The ready block?
Yep.
Yes.
So you're proposing to go ready block, and then at the end of the ready block, you're going to pick up stone wall from there?
So you can see where the wetland line, it goes back. There's the wetland line, if you scroll back on this plan, the wetland goes out towards the pond. There's 2 separate wetland lines with a sort of open area, upland area in between.
Well, I see an A series and a B series.
Exactly. So what we discussed in the field was to take the stone wall from the Lot 1 property line and across the back of the property until where the 25-foot zone sort of dropped away from the developed part of the site, and then pick it up again where it comes in close to the site. So there's a gap there where there exists now that natural walkway that goes, or pathway that goes out towards the pond. That's an open area right now. Mostly, and that's
Where
we
in
tried to
terms of the flags? I'm just having.
okay.
trying to follow
So
you.
all right. So the stone wall now ends somewhere between B5 and B6.
There's an elevation, Al, of 271.
Yep, I got
That's-
B5 and B6. I got the wall ending here. and
Yep.
then
Where that
from
so because the
there-
wetland tails away.
There's an opening
Yep.
here.
Yep.
Right here.
Yep. And then it picks up again near flag between around A10,
Yep.
where the block wall is. Now, Jen, this is my interpretation of what we discussed in the field, but, if there needs to be
I didn't know
adjustments
you
to
were
that.
then going to do a retaining wall.
I didn't know
backfill,
at that
'cause
time either.
that's
This
not
was
what we
proposed
discussed, so.
afterwards, right? The retaining wall part of it was, but again, you want a permanent structure to mark the limit of the 25-foot zone. I'm not sure if it matters if it's stone or block. It's the same feature, and it can be monumented the same way. It's something to identify, not to go beyond for construction, or for any disturbance.
Well, I understand your point on the block. I'm just, from where the block ends, the distance.
We can, and based on what you're saying from Lot 1, it sounds like you're going to want to have that come closer together.
Yeah, I think so.
Uh-huh.
And you had talked about wanting to leave a gap to allow access into the area in between the flags There's an area of what appears to be field or land in between the B series and
It's
the A
not all
series.
field, but it is, there are some trails that kind of go off in that direction.
So you wanted to be able to maintain a trail.
Mhm.
So-
No, we're not proposing any maintenance of trails or anything as part of this notice of intent.
You
So,
wanted-
just to be
somebody
clear,
wanted access to the pond.
just to be able to
So-
walk through the 25-foot no disturb zone is all. At some point, a gap in the 25-foot wall.
Sure, and I personally would not object to that. I'm just concerned about the access point to the pondway where you're in the A series of flags, where it would do the least amount of damage. That's why I'm suggesting or
Right.
using the term trail, because rather than just allow unfettered access through the A series wetland,
Well,
give
that's
some
what happens.
direction.
Right now, the trail system goes right through that wetland. That wetland is in part mowed. So the existing trail system is not, the pond edge isn't exactly as shown there. It comes closer to the wetland than what he's showing as a pond edge. But in any event, the existing trail network didn't necessarily respect a wetland boundary because the wetland boundary was never flagged at the time. This trail network goes back
It's mowed right up
No,
to the edge.
years or something.
I understand. So
Yeah.
what I'm asking you, what I'm requesting is pick a route.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right here. We're showing access through that, between those two wetland series.
What you're showing is much wider than a trail, and I think
Yeah,
that's...
that's pretty wide.
And that's what I'm saying, is that we're gonna want to, based on what you said for Lot 1, you want to bring it together more.
I
Yeah.
think that's where our confusion is.
Yeah.
What you're showing is about 50 feet wide, at least, and...
Yeah, that would be great if you're going to mow it, but you indicated you're not going to mow it.
Not going to touch it. If the
Well, it's his
property owner,
property,
he wants to
so
do
you're
something
not
with it in the
gonna mow it.
future, then
I
that's...
don't know what I can do and what
Yeah.
I can't do.
We're trying to,
So I need your help.
well, that's why I'm asking Mary to give me an access point to the pond so we can have that marked on the plan so you can have it. It needs to be called out, I think, it needs to be called out on the plan. Otherwise, it doesn't exist.
The major thing, we're all looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a huge gap.
No, I understand
between
it.
all, so we have to,
And I'm asking the question, is there a route? And she says there are several.
Currently, the path that accesses the pond shore is right between flags A9 and A10.
Okay.
And there's another one that is right about at flag between sort of A14, A15.
So A9 and A10 puts it closer to the house. That would be the most likely route of travel.
Mhm.
So let's key on that.
Mhm.
So I mean,
yeah,
I think,
but that puts you on the raised wall.
Here's a
Just
question.
beyond it.
That-
just-
Who accesses the pond?
Anybody who wants to
The
stand on the
homeowner.
side of the bank of the pond and fish or do anything.
No, what I'm saying is the neighborhood,
No.
the neighbors around, the kids and stuff like that go into the pond?
no.
But I don't.
Yeah, I mean.
No,
yeah,
the answer-
yeah,
the answer-
yeah,
The
they
answer
do.
is no.
I
No, the answer is
suspect
no.
if
This
they
was-
fail, they probably
Right.
do. And the thing is, you know,
I don't-
are you going to close it off or allow the people to use it?
They're going to have to get my permission. They're not going to be trespassing.
There's no previous history of the neighbors using the pond.
Right here.
There's no previous history of it.
It is all mowed back there, though.
No, but it was private to the owner.
bench right here?
It was not open to the public. It was
Bench
private
right
to the
here.
owner.
That's the
And I
bench
think
side.
that that's what he's suggesting. He wants to continue to have it private to the owner.
There's another
I'm
bench
just
right here,
asking,
somewhere up here.
I'm asking
Yes.
for
But the trail is
a
right
route
here.
to be called out so the owner can access his pond and have an area of access and egress. That's all I'm asking.
Well,
But this is...
That's
so it would have to be, it would probably have to
Ignore
be by
this. It
A11
doesn't mean
or
anything.
A12
Well,
because,
Mary said somewhere between A9 and A10, there's already an existing trail.
I know, but
Yeah.
there's, that block wall is 2 feet, is 4 feet high.
Yeah, so after the
What's
end...
exposed?
I think that's what Al's
So Louis-
getting at.
4 feet
That's what
exposed?
Al's getting
On the
at.
backside.
Around the wall.
On the-
3 to 4 feet is exposed, yeah,
On the backside, yeah.
on the backside.
So somewhere after the... from the block wall to the stone wall, they've got to close that gap a little bit.
Right, and put
So I'm saying,
put an egress there.
close that gap a little bit, but allow an access trail so the owner and his family can get to the pond. That's all. That's what I'm saying.
Been using for 20 years, they could.
So I was saying, I
Right.
was thinking more like
What-
A11.
Beyond what we're doing there.
I mean, A11, A12, I don't care.
Focus there.
Doesn't matter to me, I'm just trying to,
Yeah, that's, so you should be now between, around A11.
I'm saying close the gap.
That's not where it is now,
That's all
though.
I'm
That's,
saying.
you have to cut
Close the
trees.
It
go
looks
there.
funny
Can you
because
see
they're
the tree
proposing
line?
to clear all the way down to that point and then up.
No,
So
we're not
it's-
proposing to clear anything
Well,
beyond the
I think
little bit
you
of work
are.
there.
It-
No. See the existing
It
tree
says
line?
tree line typical, and it points
Yeah.
to that line that goes down to the point and then back up toward the retaining wall. That's how, I mean, that's clearly the only way to interpret that. You're going to clear all the way, all
To
the
the
way
25
in.
foot is what he's showing, yeah.
To the 25 foot, yeah.
I think you ought to come back to us with a
That's what's
proposal.
shown on the plan. If I've interpreted it
know-
wrong.
We'll just show the stone wall with a 6-foot gap where the existing trail is, because you can see,
That's-
do you see the limit of grading at the end of the stone wall?
I do.
And then you can see there's an opening in the tree line right there, right on the north
Yes.
side of it. That's where the trail comes in now.
Okay,
It comes right through there.
okay.
So the gap in the stone wall is likely to be between the end of the block wall and 6 feet beyond. We'll create a gap where that existing tree opening is right now, the existing cleared path is.
So that's a no-brainer, that they're agreeing to close the gap to 6, I don't care where they put the 6 foot.
Yeah, but she's
Yeah.
got the idea.
Right.
Yeah,
got
the only
that.
thing
But where's,
that I was confused about, because
where's the rest?
my understanding when we walked it was that where that wetland tails away, we weren't necessarily going to block off that whole open area
Be just the ground.
for people walking through. I didn't realize that we needed to we had to have a wall around the entire, you see what I'm saying? That there's all kinds of upland area that's going to be eliminated from access.
I actually,
No, they can
what
get
I
to it.
suggested at the site walk was that they develop some kind of management plan for the use of the property. There's a lot of mowing that goes on back there. There's a lot of different access points. And I knew this is how this was going to go if someone didn't define what was going to happen out there.
No, I asked for that at the last meeting.
You did.
I asked for that.
And
And I asked you to tell me if there was specific species in there and habitat. I asked for that.
right. What we would like to do as part of this notice of intent and this application is confine it to the construction that's proposed and the wall that you need to define the 25-foot zone. And if the property owner would like to do any further management of the area beyond the 25-foot wall, then he can request an amendment or come in with a separate notice of intent. But we don't have that information at this point, so, on a management plan. So we'd like to be able to just approve this without, and the only activities that are permitted are what's shown on the plan and the construction of the wall and an access trail to the pond.
So then there needs to be another
Existing
6-foot
trail.
gap left somewhere for that
Right.
access so he can get back there.
That's all.
Show the access trail.
That's all we'll do.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that okay?
so that's easy. Is there any other questions beside that on the plan? Yeah?
No, I think, my memory is that was the sticking point. It sounds like it's solved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No questions. Jack?
I don't see a detail on the 4-foot high ready block concrete wall. Would you, normally that'd be provided. A detail?
I honestly don't know.
No, I don't think so. I mean, not a big deal, I'm sure you have it. So please add it to the
We're
plan.
going to have to continue this one, right?
Yes.
Okay. So all you have to do is close the gap on the wall to 6 feet to wherever you decide you want to put it. And then everything else is fine.
And have the block wall.
Yeah, the spread out on.
And what kind of monumentation are you going to require on the wall that's,
They can put posts behind, a post on the block, whatever works for you guys.
4 feet high.
right, so we need a motion to continue.
Motion to continue to March the 9th.
Did you second, Doug?
Doug seconded. He did. Yeah,
All those in
2
favor
weeks.
say aye.
Aye.
To March 2nd?
9.
March 9th. 2 more weeks.
It was the
Thank you.
That's Randy stoves, my father, me on those in 1954.
That's an old one.
My father was probably delivering dirt.
Okay, next one. We got
COC.
242, 1169, COC request to continue to 3/9.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. 242, 1447, COC request, 2357 Turnpike.
So moved.
Request to continue. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And 242, 1559, extension request for 40 Sugar Cane Lane.
There's an enforcement order associated with that, and he's out of town tonight, so I suggest we consider the extension request when we deal with the enforcement order to be potentially closed out at the next meeting.
Okay. Duly noted. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And next, the last, well, second to last one is enforcement order 1 Oak Ave.
So this is for confirmation. I actually spoke with the owner and the contractor. There's a deck and a deck with a roof over it being constructed out there now. I believe they're likely out of the 50-foot no-build zone. They're contracting to get a delineation, and they'll also need a survey plan, likely for the building department, because there's a roof over a portion of the deck. So I had given them a filing deadline in the EO of February 26th. I would just request that the enforcement order that you approve, extend that out 2 weeks and be March 11th. They have a cease and desist as well.
So is he going to file an NOI? Or?
I don't, that's why I think we need to let them get the delineation done, and then if these decks, originally I thought it was an addition to the house, but if there's no foundation, it's just decks, he might be able to file an RDA. So I'll amend the enforcement order to reflect that, and that'll be what you sign tonight.
Okay. So need a motion?
Move that we approve the EO as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And we continued.
We're not going to issue Mill Pond, although if you, I mean,
No.
I'll revise the conditions and we'll discuss at the next
But
meeting.
we also have to, we're still waiting for DEP on Mill Pond.
Right.
We're trying to wait for DEP.
Yeah.
Comments, right.
For the record, but
I can think of
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.